Good evening, Black people and all allies fighting for Black liberation, Black prosperity, and Black joy. I'm Charles Blowett, and welcome to Prime. Several voting rights groups in Georgia who warned the president and vice president last week not to come to Atlanta without a plan to pass voting rights now say they plan to boycott the event altogether. According to Reuters, Black Voters Matter, New Georgia Project Action Fund, the Asian American Advocacy Fund, and the GALEO Impact Action Fund, which represents Latinos, will not attend the speech tomorrow because they don't feel the administration has made voting rights enough of a priority. That comes as the White House says the Biden is expected to speak about potential Senate rule changes in his speech tomorrow. Here's what the White House press secretary said earlier today.
Over the past year, President Biden has expressed more openness about taking a look at filibuster rules, especially when it comes to voting rights. Is that a topic you expect him to directly address tomorrow and get into?
Yes.
All this as the Hill reports that Democratic lawmakers are losing confidence about whether Senator Manchin wants to strike a legislative deal with President Biden. Some Democrats reportedly compare negotiating with Manchin to using an Etch-a-Sketch because of how easily talks with him dissolve and fall apart. House Majority Whip James Clyburn also slammed Manchin for arguing that a change to the filibuster in order to pass voting rights must be bipartisan. Clyburn said this in response: "I am, as you know, a Black person, descendant of people who were given the vote by the 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution. The 15th Amendment was not a bipartisan vote. It was a single-party vote that gave Black people the right to vote. Manchin and others need to stop saying that, because that gives me great pain for someone to imply that the 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution is not legitimate because it did not have bipartisan buy-in." Senate Majority Leader Schumer announced today the Senate will hold a vote later this week, and if Republicans block voting bills again, there will be a rules change debate. Joining me now to discuss is former California Senator Barbara Boxer and Associate Professor of Political Science at Howard University, Dr. Niambi Carter. So, Senator Boxer, what do you make of these groups in Georgia now saying that they will boycott tomorrow's event? These are all groups of color who have been advocating and organizing on the ground. They are probably very much a big part of the reason that Joe Biden won the state of Georgia and the big part of the reason that the Democrats have control of the Senate.
What I think is that they're doing what activists do. And I started out as an activist. I got involved in politics because of the war in Vietnam. And so I think they're doing what they have to do. I'm sure the president and the vice president feel bad about this. On the other hand, they're going to go there and they're going to say what they plan to do. We don't know the substance of what they're going to say. But as far as my point of view on the activists, I think they are doing what they have to do because they don't want just words, they want deeds. And now is the time.
Dr. Carter, we don't know, as Senator Boxer said, we don't know the full extent of what he's going to say tomorrow, but the White House has indicated that he's going to say something about endorsement of a rules change to get this passed, to get rid of the filibuster, or at least to alter the filibuster in some way. What do you think about just timing and pacing of this? The president has dragged his feet for so long, refusing to address this issue in any substantive way. And then in that town hall on CNN, he finally said he was open to some changes, but he also said that he couldn't do it now because it would cost him votes on the thing that he really wanted, which was the spending bill. Now Manchin has blown up the spending bill. They don't want to talk about it right now. They want to let everybody cool off. Now he says he's coming to Georgia, finally, doing the road show that he said he was promised to do a couple of months ago. And he's finally going to say at least something about a rules change. What do you think about that timing and how this is all played out?
Well, I think he's coming off of the high from January 6th, where he got pretty high praise for the comments he made on the commemoration of that event. And so I think one of the things he knows is with the Georgia legislature opening up, that this is a key battleground state. We have midterm elections around the corner. You cannot keep neglecting the voters who did the work, the activists who did the work, and then expect that these people are going to show up again. Your job is to legislate. They did their jobs for you by showing out to vote. And I think now what Joe Biden is trying to do is appease those groups of people who have said for far too long that, look, if you separate Build Back Better from the infrastructure bill, you're going to get nothing. And that's exactly what's happened. And these people are also saying if you keep allowing people like Joe Manchin to stymie the conversation around voting rights, and if you keep allowing this sort of fetishization of the filibuster to continue, then you're actually going to end up worse off. And we see that the moves in state legislatures from Georgia to Tennessee are nipping away or eating away at that voting base. So I think right now, Joe Biden really doesn't have any more time. He has to do something because right now he's promised a lot and delivered, from many people's perspective, very little, particularly Black folks, when you're talking about voting rights, where we're seeing this erosion and this chipping away at those voting rights in these key states. So I think Joe Biden, it's high time, and he knows he can carve out this rules change and still have the filibuster, but allow voting rights to move forward.
Senator Boxer, you know the Senate well. Is this a make or break week for the Senate, and particularly for their dealing with Joe Manchin? Everyone has met with Joe Manchin at this point. Everyone has had a conversation with Joe Manchin at this point. Former presidents are calling Joe Manchin. Oprah reportedly is calling Senator Manchin. He's heard it all. And even after hearing it all, he has indicated in no way that he is willing to give on the filibuster. You, as a person who knows the Senate, knows Manchin, what do you think this week holds for this administration and for this piece of legislation?
Well, you're right. Everybody is talking to Joe Manchin, and I think it's good that they are. And I don't know, and we talked about this before, Charles. I don't know if he, has a plan in mind, but he won't say, and that's wrong. I negotiated a lot of bills on infrastructure, on the environment, on many things, women's rights, etc. And you have to know where everybody stands. It's only fair. So he needs to tell Oprah, and most of all, tell Chuck Schumer what it is he wants to do. Now, I hold out hope that he will move to vote for some type of reform, which means people have to stand on their feet. They just can't call in their opposition. But I think, the way you present it is very clear, Charles. This is a make or break moment. And that's why I do support Senator Schumer putting this on the floor, because everybody's talked to him. He's told them A, B, or C. Now let's see what happens. They're going to have 2 votes, I believe, on motions to proceed to the 2 voting rights bills. And if they don't get 60 votes for that, the bills can't even come up for a vote. And that point is the moment where it seems to me, Sinema and Manchin and anyone else who has any thoughts that it's very important to have the right to vote, by the way, that they should act on that and preserve that right. So I think I don't disagree with anything that's been said by anybody. I do want to make one point clear. Joe Biden or any president has nothing to do with the Senate rules. Can they push? Can they cajole? Can they lead? Can they? Yes. But at the end of the day, I know because, President Biden is, knows the Senate rules and knows the Senate like anybody. He says it's 100 presidents. And in some ways, it's true. It's really ridiculous. The filibuster is not in the Constitution. Right. It's been used against civil rights over and over again. There's nothing sacred about it. And last point I'd make, Charles, is because I am a former senator, I talk a lot, so I'll try to wrap it up here. We know that Mitch McConnell just ended the filibuster for Supreme Court judges that I fought hard to preserve. As soon as he got power, boom, and then he stacked the courts. And then he did it on a good thing to get rid of the filibuster for the debt ceiling. So all of this chit chat by Mitch McConnell about how awful this is, don't use the nuclear option. You know what the nuclear option is? Not passing voting rights. That's a nuclear option. And people won't have the rights
Right.
that they had before.
I take your point, Senator, but we don't want to leave the impression that a president is powerless in this situation. He is far from it. And in the same way that he put pressure on people publicly for Build Back Better and called all senators together and put pressure on them in the room and also put pressure on them in the media and in the press, he can do the same thing for voting rights. He has not done
Yes.
that, and I don't want that to go. I don't want that to go unsaid.
Yes,
I do agree with
but
you, however.
Charles-
I want him to tell Schumer before he tells Oprah what he's going to do. I agree on that point, absolutely. So,
But can
Dr.
I just
Carter,
make one point? He didn't get Build Back
yes.
Better. He didn't get Build Back Better because he doesn't control.
But
Manchin.
but Senator, I think the point that activists are making is this: if you don't even extend the effort, it sends a signal to them that you don't care as much about this set of bills as you did about the other one. The same, if you can go to the Hill and call everybody into a room and yell at them about Build Back Better, you can do the exact same thing for voting rights for Black and brown and Asian people. You can do that. The president has simply not done that, and we cannot let him off the hook for that. He's coming to Georgia. He's going to say something about it. I applaud him for that. Whether or not he's doing that in time or not, I'm not sure. Is it getting a very long in the day for this to be happening when some states start to vote literally next month, early voting? And they're going to be voting on maps that are racially and politically gerrymandered, and they're consciously drawing Black Congress people out of their districts, state after state after state. He needs to do this. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give him a pass on that. He can do it, and he needs to do it. I hope he does it tomorrow in Georgia.
Please, Charles, I don't give him a pass at all. I support what the activists are doing. I was just making the point because I served in that body for so long. That presidents, as influential as they are, including Barack Obama, including Bill Clinton, including Trump, including I served with 5 presidents, okay? The end of the day, you're absolutely right. He's got to fight and fight for this. But at the end of the day, it's very tough. And I think he can win this thing. I do. And I applaud what the activists are doing. But I want to just let everyone within the sound of my voice know that the senators write their own rules. And I wish it were not so. I wish that President Biden had a vote on that.
So, Dr. Carter, I'm going to give you a final question here. Martin Luther King Day is 1 week from today. It's next Monday. The Speaker of the House, Speaker of the Senate has said that he's going to hold a vote. Right now, we don't know how Manchin is going to vote if Republicans do what everyone expects them to do and not allow debate on this bill. And Schumer's going to says he's going to move directly from that into a debate about rules changes, which is the filibuster. Do you believe that he's going to go into next Monday literally basically winging it on the Senate floor, not knowing how this is going to end, and with the possibility that it could end disastrously?
Absolutely. Look, I think Joe Manchin is a liar, full stop. I don't think he's interested in negotiation. These people have done everything under the sun to appease this man, and there's very little that he wants that they can give him that he'll find amenable, right? Like as soon as they start talking, these talks always mysteriously fall apart. So I think this idea that we can pin any of our hopes on Joe Manchin coming to the table are just a fool's errand. Joe Manchin, I think, is happy to take the slings and arrows, right, that come along with it, because he's providing cover to other co-partisans, right, who are not as bold enough to stand out there and say, I don't support this, and here's why. And I mean, quite frankly, Joe Manchin has really not offered a good reason why he's not here for voting rights. But I think, Joe Manchin is getting more coverage for being this obstructionist than he has for anything he's done in his legislative career. And I think there's a part of him that enjoys the fact that now his co-partisans have to come to him, that they have to talk to him over and over again, and in some ways be willing to give over the store to get him to agree to anything. I think Joe Manchin is dangling the idea that he will talk or agree or compromise about any of this stuff, but he won't. And he showed that he can, right? He agreed about the debt ceiling. He carved that out because he cares more about America's credit card than he does about the voting rights of minoritized communities in this country. So I don't think there's anything that we can expect from Joe Manchin other than for him to be as obstructionist and obsequious and less than forthcoming than he has been all of these months.
Senator Barbara Boxer and Dr. Niambi Carter, thank you both, as always, for joining us. I really appreciate your time.